Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. 5 to go on Parshas Bamidbar. Ezrat Hashem, Parshas Bamidbar is the beginning of the fourth book of the Torah, and very, very exciting to begin a new Chumash. Parshas Bamidbar is always read before Shavuos. It's not always the Parsha right before Shavuos. This year it is, and we'll obviously connect those two ideas together. The Medrash begins in the very beginning of the Torah with a very strange Medrash. It's like one of those, you have to follow the bouncing ball. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. Hashem says there shall be light, and says the Medrash, Zu Chumash Bereshis. That's Bereshis, there shall be light. Referring to the creation, the beginning of the world. Vayehi Or, the pasuk continues, Zeh Chumash Shemos. This is the Chumash of Shemos. Why? This is the formation of the nation itself, of Am Yisrael, the formation of the light. We received the Torah in Shemos. The Jewish people became a people, and also the building of the Mishkan. The light, the potential is created in Bereshis, and it fulfills that potential in Chumash Shemos. Vayar Elokim es ha'or ki tov. God sees that the light is good. That is Vayikra. We can also appreciate that now we are beginning to use the light, use the Mishkan, use the Torah, and just like Hashem sees it's good, we see it is good. Good. Vayavdel Elokim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech. And then God separates between the light and the dark. Okay. Now, that is Chumash Bamidbar. Let's get back to that one in a minute. Vayikra Elokim la'or yom. God calls the day, or he calls light. What does he call light? He calls that day. Okay? Maybe that one needs further explanation, and maybe that we'll do in a few months from now. But Vayavdel, God separates between the light and the dark. That is Bamidbar. Now, what does that mean? That God is separating between light and dark, and that refers to Bamidbar. What is the light and what is the dark in Bamidbar? So the knee-jerk reaction of this Medrash, I would say, is there are very tragic episodes that happen in the book of Bamidbar, which represent the darkness, and they're also very light, very or moments. You have the Meraglim, and you have the story episode with Korach, and you have the Mei Meriva. You have many, many very challenging, difficult episodes, which we can call dark. Yet the Jewish people are living in the Midbar. They're getting sustained and taken care of by the Ribono Shel Olam each and every day. There are miracles and wars that are won literally miraculously. And this Bamidbar represents the Jewish people's journey in the desert for all those 40 years. So there's Or, and there is Choshech. And I guess that is the way that I would have interpreted this Medrash. However, the Netziv makes the following point. He says that's not really accurate. You're separating between Or and Choshech. That's Bamidbar. He says like this. Bamidbar is the time of light. The existence of the Jewish people in the Midbar was light. But Bamidbar really is a book of transitions. We transition from life in the Midbar to going into Eretz Yisrael. Devarim is really a review. It's really Moshe's speech to the Jewish people before he takes leave of this world. And it's really that already they're on Arvos, Moab, they're getting ready to go into Eretz Yisrael. They're on the Evar Yarden. Now, Bamidbar is really the final book of the Torah, according to many, with at least the narrative, the stories of what happens. And what is Choshech here? Choshech, the Netziv writes, is the Jewish people's existence in Eretz Yisrael. Whoa. Now the Netziv says, what does that mean? Right, that's what the Medrash means. Vayavdel Elokim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshech zeh Chumash Bamidbar. Right? The Midbar is Or, Eretz Yisrael is Choshech. I would have said the exact opposite. I would have thought Eretz Yisrael, that is, or Avira Da'ara Machim, just being in Eretz Yisrael is very special and very holy. But being in Chutz La'aretz, right, that's darkness. But the Netziv says it's the exact opposite. And he shares the following. He says that being in the Midbar was completely miraculous. We lived a Me'al HaTeva experience, being fed every single day from the man, 6 days a week, getting water from a rock. That is completely light. The reaction or the interaction between us and Hashem is very, very clear. We can see it, we can feel it, we can touch it. It is very clear. It is very, very clear. However, the experience of our relationship with Hashem in Eretz Yisrael is fundamentally different. It's a relationship of Choshech. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very close, yet Hashem tells us over and over and over again that our life in Israel is not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging. There are going to be rough patches in our experience in Israel. We're going to have to win wars through natural means. It's not going to be, miracles each and every day. We're going to have to plant. We're going to have to work the ground. It's not even going to be like Mitzrayim, and that was very, very easy. They had the Nile. But the dark life of Eretz Yisrael can be a lot more fulfilling. And he says that is the Eretz Yisrael, and that is the Midbar, the light mode of the Midbar, right, versus the Choshech of Eretz Yisrael. And I want to use this idea to express, some explain, but the light mode is more demanding, having Hashem closer to us in that way, giving us the miracles. Then there's more expectations of what we have to do, in the Midbar. That's why every small little thing creates, big problems for the Jewish people, every mistake here and there. However, in Eretz Yisrael, there's more flexibility, even as we make mistakes in the beginning of our life in Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem has more patience for us. He's less demanding of us in a certain way, in a bigger sense. In Eretz Yisrael, that's the Choshech, and that is the lights. Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe b'midbar Sinai b'ohel moed b'echad l'chodesh hasheni b'shan hashenis. Let's say some Eretz Yisrael late more. Hashem speaks to the Jewish people. Hashem speaks to Moshe in Midbar Sinai. Says the Medrash that the Torah was given be'esh, b'mayim, uva midbar. The Torah was really compared to fire, water, and was given to us in the Midbar. Now, what does this mean? This is maybe the connection, maybe one of the reasons why we read this parsha right before Zman Matan Torasenu. So, two interpretations. Some say the Eish, the Mayim, and the Midbar reflect certain midos, certain character traits that are helpful to help us be recipients of the Torah. Number one, Eish represents passion, excitement, what gives us passion, what gets us excited. We need to have a passion for the Torah itself. Secondly, Mayim represents water always from a high point always goes down, represents a sense of humility. Those that, you think of the people that you are most attracted to in Torah, the people you learn from, the Gedolei Yisrael, were the ones that had and have the most humility, even though they can be counted amongst the greatest. That is Eish, that is Mayim. Midbar represents this ability of Hefkerus, that you're not, Midbar is ownerless. Anybody can go into a Midbar. Generally, it's not great real estate, not great land, and it's no man's land. So, in order for one to become somebody that owns the Torah, we have to view ourselves as, an empty slate. And there's always more for us to learn, just like a midbar is empty. So too, we always need to be trying to consume Torah in our lives. Rabbi Meir Shapiro says something different. I think this is very, very beautiful. He adds that there are 3 episodes that the Jewish people went through in our history that caused us to receive the Torah. And each episode was an episode of self-sacrifice on behalf of the nation. Number 1 was Aish. Avram Avinu experienced with Nimrod the Kivshan Ha'esh. He was willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of the Ribono Shel Olam. That is Aish, right? In 3 things, we received the Torah. We were given the Torah. 1 is Aish. 2nd is Mayim. Just as we were leaving the Midbar, leaving Mitzrayim, the Egyptians were chasing us, and we risked our lives by going into the water, going into the Yam Suf. We risked our lives. That's number 2. And number 3, he says, Midbar, the Navi Yirmiyahu points out, Lech tech acharai b'midbar, Be'eretz lo zerua, that we went into the Midbar with no meal plan, no food expected, with nothing, just relying on Hashem. And in these 3 episodes, this really forged the Jewish people, created us into a nation, both Avram as being the first Jew, our first one of the Avos, and through these 2 moments after leaving Mitzrayim, this forged us and created us into a nation that was ready to receive the Torah. I don't think this is only about you have to sacrifice, therefore, or be willing to give up a lot, and therefore, those are people that receive the Torah. That's not always true in everybody's life. You have to give up a lot for, receiving the Torah. Sometimes keeping halacha does come with, costs, and again, for greater benefits. But maybe this reflects the idea of the Jewish people being a resilient nation. We are a resilient Am, and that we are going to go through difficult times in our life, either running away from enemies or, forging just our people as a nation in the Midbar. And it's those crucibles that create us as a strong nation and as a resilient nation itself. In Parshas Ki Tisa, Moshe Rabbeinu tries to convince Hashem to save us after, and he says Hashem should forgive us because we are an Am Kishei Oref, because we are stubborn. And if you think about it, that seems to be a really bad reason to save us, right? If you think of the boy that is going to get thrown out of high school for making a mistake, and then what does the rabbi, what do the parents say? No, keep him in the school. You know why? Because he's really stubborn, because he is an Am Kishei Oref. Rav Hirsch writes, we are an Am Kishei Oref, which means that no matter what comes our way, we are not going to be deterred. If we get knocked down, we are going to get up again. We're going to rise, and we are going to become stronger. And maybe that is ultimately the message of the Torah was given to us and compared to 3 different things, Aish, Mayim, and Midbar, which represents the resiliency of Am Yisrael. The Ramban also shares this very, very similar idea later on in the Parsha. We count the Jewish people in several different ways in our Parsha. Number 1, we take a census of the entire nation. Secondly, we take a census of the totals of each flag division. We learn about the Machanos were split up into 4 different groups, and we take a census of them. And then we take a census of the Levium separately than everybody else. The Ramban is curious as to why Shevet Levi has so few people. The Levium, trying to pull up the number right now, but here's the Levium were much, much less fundamentally than every other Shevet. And the Ramban wants to know why that is so. They don't even reach, half of other Shvatim. It's wild. Over 22,300, right? So how can it be that they are so much less than everybody else? That could be a reason why there are so few Levium, maybe historically. Maybe that's part of it, why there's so few Levium out there. But why is that? So the Ramban makes the following suggestion. He says that we know that the Levium were not part of the Avdas in Mitzrayim. They were not slaves in Egypt. The Egyptians had this concept of priests in their nation itself, and they did not serve in Egypt as slaves. Because they did not serve as Egyptian slaves, they did not get the zechus of Peru or Vru. Paru vayitratzu vayirbu mimod ma'od. They did not have the amount of children as everybody else. Those that were forged through slavery had this tenacity or this bracha, he says about them, that those other Shvatim grew exponentially in Egypt. The Levium grew normally. He says, Al pi derech hateva, they grew normally. And the normal number for the amount of people that should have been after X amount of years in Egypt is the number of the Levium. Every other Shevet that went through difficult times and trials and tribulations through the Shibud Mitzrayim, they ended up with a lot more children miraculously. Not that it was like, oh, because you got punished, Hashem therefore felt bad for you. But what he is saying is that sometimes through the resilient experiences that we have in our lives, that helps us come out and emerge stronger. And that is just to appreciate this is the reality of Am Yisrael. It's not something that we necessarily chose for ourselves. It is part of our history and part of our destiny to be an Am that is always chased and always attacked. But part of that is that we have a resiliency and a tenacity about us that is always going to help us grow and proliferate and really, be a guiding light to the rest of the world itself. So we began by mentioning the Medrash, Choshech and Or, the Midbar versus Eretz Israel. Secondly, the three things that the Torah is compared to and given through, Eish, Midbar, and Mayim. Third, the Ramban, why was Shevet Levi so fewer people than everybody else? Says Rashi, the very first Rashi in our Parsha, in Sefer Bamidbar, Rashi writes the following. Why is Hashem counting us now? Right? Why? First of all, doesn't Hashem know how many people there are? Like, Hashem doesn't even have to snap his fingers, right? Hashem just knows how many people there are. Why is he counting us in the Torah? Right? Why does Hashem give so much real estate to the Torah, to the counting of the Jewish people? This is so important. So it says Rashi something very, very beautiful. Hashem wants to show how much he loves us. And we count things that we love. We count things that matter to us. So we physically count them. We pay attention to them more. We look at our stocks. We look at our pension. We look at those things all the time because it matters to us. It matters to us. I hope we love our spouses. We love our families more than we love our stocks, but it matters to us. We count them all the time. We're paying attention to them all the time. When we left Egypt, Hashem counted us. When we fell with Chet Egel, Hashem counted us to see how many were left. And when Hashem gave his Shechina to us, right? When was that? The Echad b'Nisan, who come a Mishkan. That was a month before Bamidbar takes place. Hashem counts us a month later in Chodesh Iyar. In Chodesh Iyar. Okay, so he counts us to show the love that he has for us. Mona Osam Kol Sha'a. He counts us. Kol Sha'a literally means all the time. The Menachem Sion has a very nice drash on the words of Rashi. He says, what does it mean by Kol Sha'a? Really, God's not counting us all the time. He counts us 3 times, right? These are 3 moments. Almost basically, the Maharal points this out, basically within a year and a little bit, Hashem counts us 3 times. That's completely unnecessary. And that's why Rashi's saying here, it seems to be completely superfluous to count us 3 times within the course of a year. It makes sense. In America, I believe you have a sentence every 10 years. I think in most, I think in Israel also, it's every 10 years. That makes sense. Populations can shift and populations can change. Therefore, we need to count. But counting 3 times within a year, that really shows the love that a Kadosh Baruch Hu has for all of us. Good. But says the Menachem Sion something a little bit different. He says that maybe Sha'a means something different over here, based on a Mishnah in Avos, in the 4th parak. The Mishnah says, Ein lecha adam she'ein lo sha'a. Every person has their moment. We would say every person has their 15 minutes of fame. Ein lecha adam she'ein lo sha'a. And now what does that mean if we plug that word in, sha'a, as in everyone has their good moments in life, right? What does that mean? That mitochi basam lefana mona osam kol sha'a. Hashem chooses to count us in good moments. Doesn't fit with the literal words of Rashi, because chet ega is definitely not a good moment. But when does Hashem try to count us? He tries to catch us doing good things. And we're doing good things. He goes, those are my kids. I'm so proud of them. Look at what they're doing, right? Of course, he's with us in the difficult times too. But when does he count us, right? He wants to catch us doing good things, right? And this is so important, right? For all the people around us. Doesn't matter the age it's so important to catch people. We're so good at catching people when they make mistakes around us, when they mess up, when they're doing something that annoys us. We're really great at pointing it out. But how good are we at pointing out things when people do things that are good for us? Right? How good are we at recognizing that and showing that it matters to us too? Research shows, right? If you need more incentive, that when we do that, it reinforces people to do more good things, right? Mitochi basam lefanav, mona osam kol sha'a. Because he loves us, he wants to show us what he loves about us. And when he finds us doing something good, he catches that and he talks about it and he cares about it. And that is so, so significant. Okay, that's a beautiful shot within the language of Rashi. The Rosh Sternbach, I think, just adds to this. He just adds to this and says, the next pasuk tells us the commandment to count the Jewish people. Su'u es Rosh Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael. It should have said, Su'u es Rosh, count the head of each person. He writes, we should have said, Su'u es Rosham, count all the heads of the Jewish people. Why is it in singular and not, or Su'u es Roshe, as Roshe Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael? Why is it count the head of all the Jewish people? Sure, we interpret it the way we interpret it, the heads of, but the pasuk should have said Roshe Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael. Now, why is that? And he says because Hashem wanted to show how much each person themselves matters to him, and it's like each person is a Klal Yisrael unto themselves. Each person is an Olam Maleh, and that is highlighted over here. And he quotes the Baal Shem Tov, who writes that Hashem says to Avram Avinu that your progeny is going to be Kecholchvei Hashamayim. V'haya zaracha kechochvei hashemayim. Your children are going to be like the stars in the sky. And what does that mean, like the stars in the sky? And he says what that means is that from our perspective, the stars are tiny. They are very, very small. But when you get closer, you know that the stars are huge. They're tremendous. And they provide so much light. When you're further away from the star, you don't really appreciate how much they can give, right? And if they were closer, it would be dangerous because it would be too much light, in fact. But if they are, and they're just in their right position, the closer you get, you realize how special they are. He says the same thing is true about Am Yisrael. Really not about Am Yisrael, each person themselves. Mitziusam chashuva ve'elyona. Right? It's not noticeable and discernible to every individual to know, right, how impactful and how special and how unique every person is. It's hard to know because we see them at a distance. But when you're able to get closer to somebody, you see how big they really are. That's why the Torah says, "Ues Rosh Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael." Each Rosh on their own is so and so unique. Okay. That is what number 4. You really see this when you learn about every chayal that dies, is killed in battle. And you see how impactful their life was, and how special and holy each and every neshama is. Okay. The last idea comes from another Ramban. This is the Kloisenberger Rebbe called this a Hasidish Rebbe Ramban. Okay. The Gemara in Sota, in 2 different places, calls Moshe Rabbeinu the Safra Rabbah de Yisrael, the great Sofer of Yisrael. Now, what does that mean? That he's a great Sofer? How would you translate that word? That Moshe Rabbeinu is a Safra Rabbah de Yisrael. How would you translate that word Safra? Everyone knows I'm setting them up, so they're not going to answer. Safra Rabbah de Yisrael, simply put, he's a Sofer. Moshe is the greatest scribe. Moshe wrote the first Sefer Torah. In fact, the day he died, some say, the Gemara says that he wrote many Sifrei Torah on the day that he passed away. The Gemara says also he died on Shabbos, so how could he write Sifrei Torah on Shabbos? The Mefarshim deal with that very interesting halachic quandary. But Moshe is called the Safra Rabbah de Yisrael. The Maharsha says, no. It's not describing Moshe's prowess as a scribe, but Moshe's Safra Rabbah. Moshe is the great counter of the Jewish people. He is the great census taker of the Jewish people. And you need to ask yourself, like, okay, can anybody, be the census taker? Why is that so special that Moshe Rabbeinu is the census taker? There was a Rashi in our Parsha where Moshe is instructed by Hashem to count the Jewish people. And he's told, Rashi quotes Chazal, that Moshe went to every tent. And what happened by every tent? Hashem told him how many people were in the tent, because it was inappropriate for Moshe Rabbeinu to go into tents with maybe there were women there, maybe the men were at home. There could have been yichud issues. It would just not be appropriate for him to do that. That's what the super commentaries on Rashi point out. And maybe he's a great census taker because literally he walked from tent to tent counting on Yisrael. The Ramban says it a little bit different. The Ramban writes the following, that why was it so important to have Moshe and Aaron, right? Really, Aaron's part of this, and you'll see in its different points that Aaron was involved in the counting also. Right? You and Aaron. So he says the following: Ki ba besod ha'am ubichtav b'nei Yisrael ubeschus harabim b'misram. He says what would happen, that the way they took the census was that everybody came before Moshe and Aaron to be counted. Haba lifnei av hanevim ve'echav kadosh Hashem. Everyone came before, had to have like a meeting. I don't think they were selling their chametz, but they came before Moshe and Aaron to meet with them. And Moshe and Aaron would say to them, okay, how many people do you have in your family? Right? Okay, what's the name of your family? Who is your grandfather? Right? And then include them in the census, in the counting of Am Yisrael. But he says that was just a pretext to get them to come to experience a moment with Moshe and Aaron, to just see them and to just be with them. That within itself is important. Ki asimu alehem einam latova. And they would see these two gedolim, these two tremendous. I know, it doesn't feel comfortable calling Moshe and Aaron gedolim. They were way more than just that, right? Adon hanavim. But to have that experience makes an impact on an individual to see Moshe and Aaron. And then you can ask Moshe and Aaron, we're going through a tough day. Invariably, what's going to happen is that people are going to talk with them. I need to tell you about what's going on with my kids. I need some help and hatzlacha in my own life. I don't know what worries they had too much in the midbar, but just the recognition, they had their worries on their own level. And Moshe and Aaron, could you daven for me? And this would happen over and over and over again. And the way that and then they handed their shekalim, that was how they counted the Jewish people. And then he would say, how many family members do you have? How many kids do you have? And the whole goal here was really to experience Moshe and Aaron. And Moshe and Aaron can show their soft side. Sometimes when you are the leader of Am Yisrael, no one really sees you on a personal level. You just see the shiur that they give. You just see what they represent, and you see them from a distance. And seeing from a distance, you don't really get to see their greatness in a certain way. You can see how smart they are, how much Torah they know. Maybe they take a strong stand here or there. But to see really how close they are, that's and how special they are, that you could see really up close. So the Ramban says really the point of counting Klal Yisrael was not about counting Klal Yisrael, but it was a pretext to get everyone in front of Moshe and Aaron, and how special that is, the impact of interacting with Gedolei Yisrael and impacting with people that are special, that are unique. And just that within itself makes an impact in Roshem on who we are. That just to see Gedolei Yisrael within itself is so special. That's why the Kloisenberger said that this Ramban is a Hasidic Ramban. This is one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Neuberger, said that he thinks Hasidim took a lot of their minhagim, in general, the movement, from a lot of Torah from the Ramban, and this would be a very good example of that. They're much better at this, I would say, than we are. Okay, so just
Rabbi,
Jay.
Names, not numbers.
Names, not numbers. So that's actually a similar vort, but I'll tell you.
Right, but I hear the connection. Until you said that, I was thinking we're counting people in numbers, but beautiful.
So Jay, then I'll add to this. Rapinkus points this out. I mentioned this in previous years. That's why I didn't mention it this year. It's a similar idea. We're counted mispar shemos. Mispar is a number. A shem is a name. Right? A number is not identifiable. You're just a number. Like, I remember when I was in high school, my teachers would tell me, you should appreciate how nice we are to you now, because when you get to college and you pull this stuff off, you're just a number. No one cares about you anymore. In high school, we know who you are. We know who your parents are. You matter. I don't know. I went to YU. I think they knew who I was. It's a little bit different. But we could appreciate that idea. Mispar Shemos, we're both. In a certain way, we're a shame. We're a name. We matter. We have parents. We're part of the Masorah. Moshe Rabbeinu wants to meet with us and talk with us. And we're also a mispar. You know why? Because like we get subsumed within Klal Yisrael to appreciate the number, that we're a chain, we're a link, amongst all of Am Yisrael. And then we are a number two. We need to carry, I think, both of these in both of our pockets, the mispar and the shame. Sometimes it means we fall in line, with everybody else. And I think that mashal is very resonates. And then also, then sometimes we step forward and we are ourselves and we are our own individual. That's the message of the mispar and the shame. Yeah, Sam?
It sounds like a lot of good stuff from counting. But when David counts Bnei Yisrael, he gets
a lot of trouble.
He get a plague. Yeah. And when we have 10 people coming into the school, who I can't say is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I sort of have to figure out another way to get to 10. We don't count. It's like it's a complete change of venues. So
well, we don't count. We don't count. That's based on Psukim and Kiti, so we don't count people with numbers. That's how we did it. We had shekalim, right? You gave a shekel, you counted the shekel, not the people, on purpose. There's an ayin hara. There's something negative about counting people in that way. We don't have to get dark, like look at the people that counted us in history. It wasn't necessarily.
But look with David. David
right,
counted.
David's a little bit more challenging because David should know better, and that's what the Ramban in Parshat Kitisa, and the beginning of our parsha deals with that. Ezrat Hashem probably in 3-4 months we'll get up to that story in Shmuel Beis on Mondays. But just to review for today, we began with Vayavdel Elokim ben Or ben Choshech, the Or being Bamidbar, Choshech being Eretz Yisrael, and how could that be? Eish, Mayim, and Midbar, the 3 ways that we receive the Torah and the Torah is compared to. What is unique about that? We had different ideas. Why is Shevet Levi so fewer than every other Shevet? The resiliency of Am Yisrael forged through difficulties. For Safra Rabbah Yisrael Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rashi's beautiful interpretation of Amona Osam Osha, and what the deeper meaning of it is. Wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos.